Jake Morrison stared at the message on his screen for the third time. The words made no sense. After 3,000 years, nobody used the old Earth Colonial Authority codes. Nobody even remembered them. But there it was, glowing green against the black display of his command console. The mining station around him hummed with its usual sounds. Workers moved through the corridors outside his office. Ships came and went from the docking bays. Everything was normal except for this impossible message. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked again. The coordinates were still there. The word "remember" still pulsed at the bottom of the screen. He called Lisa Grant to his office. She was his best pilot and one of the few people on Kepler Station who knew the old stories. Her grandmother had told her tales about Earth before the Galactic Council made such stories illegal. When Lisa saw the message, her face went pale. "This can't be real," she whispered. "The Earth Authority died with Earth. Everyone knows that." Jake nodded, but something in his chest felt tight. Maybe. But what if it didn't? What if someone survived? Tony Rodriguez joined them an hour later. He was their chief engineer and Jake's oldest friend. Tony had always been curious about the old technology. He spent his free time studying broken human machines that nobody else could fix. When he saw the message, he started checking the signal patterns. "This came from deep space," Tony said after running his tests. "Way beyond the outer rim. And Jake, the encryption is perfect. Nobody today knows how to fake these old codes." The three friends looked at each other. They all knew the stories their grandparents whispered. How Earth had been a green world full of life. How humans had built great ships and explored the stars. How the Galactic Council had come in peace, but brought only death. The official history said humans had been violent and dangerous. It said the Council had to stop them before they hurt innocent species. But the whispered stories told a different tale. Jake made his decision. "We're going to those coordinates." Lisa shook her head. "Jake, that's beyond Council space. If we're caught out there ... Then we don't get caught," Jake replied. "Tony, can you get us a ship?" Tony grinned. "I know where there's an old scout vessel. It's been marked for scrap, but the engines still work. I can have it ready in 2 days." They left Kepler Station quietly. Jake told the other workers he was taking a survey mission to check some distant asteroids. Nobody questioned him. Jake had been running the station for 5 years, and everyone trusted him. The small ship moved through space without attracting attention. The coordinates led them to an asteroid field at the edge of known space. Ancient rocks drifted in the darkness like sleeping giants. Tony's scanners found something hidden among them. It was huge and made of metal, but covered in rock and ice. It looked like it had been hiding there for thousands of years. "There's an airlock," Lisa said as she brought the ship closer. "It's old, but it looks human." They docked carefully. The airlock cycled, and they found themselves in corridors that felt familiar yet strange. The walls showed human writing, but it was faded and old. Emergency lights flickered in the darkness. Their boots echoed as they walked deeper into the structure. Tony's scanner beeped. "There's power here." "Not much, but something is still running." They followed the power source through winding corridors. Jake felt like he was walking through a ghost. This place had been built by humans, but not the humans he knew. These builders had been free. They had been strong. They had been something the galaxy no longer allowed humans to be. The power source led them to a large room filled with strange machines. In the center was a cylinder made of clear metal. Inside the cylinder was a woman. She was floating in blue, liquid, and looked like she was sleeping. Tubes and wires connected her to the machines around her. "Cryogenic suspension," Tony breathed. "She's been asleep for..." "Jake, the readings say 3,000 years." Lisa found the control panel. Most of the buttons were dark, but one glowed green. Next to it were words in old human script. Emergency Revival Protocol. Jake stared at the sleeping woman. She looked young, but he knew she was older than their entire civilization. She's the last one, isn't she? The last person who remembers. He pressed the button. The machines hummed louder. The blue liquid drained away. The woman's eyes opened, and she gasped for air. She looked around with confusion and fear. When she saw Jake and the others, she tried to speak, but no sound came out. "Easy," Jake said softly. "You're safe. We're human." The woman stared at him. Tears ran down her face. "Human," she whispered. Are there still humans?" "Yes," Jake replied. "We survived." She laughed and cried at the same time. "My name is Helen Carter, Dr. Helen Carter. I was the director of Project Exodus." She looked around the room. "How long?" 3,000 years, Lisa said gently. Helen closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were hard as stone. "Then you don't know. You don't know what really happened." She led them to another room filled with recording devices and data storage units. Her hands shook as she activated the old machines. Images appeared on the screens. Jake saw things that made his stomach turn. Ships burning in space. Cities melting under energy weapons. Humans running and screaming as alien soldiers hunted them down. "The Galactic Council didn't just destroy Earth," Helen said. "They hunted us. Every human colony, every space station, every ship. They told the galaxy we were dangerous. They said we would conquer and destroy if we were allowed to live." More images flashed on the screens. Human children being taken from their parents. Human adults being put into camps. Human culture being burned and forgotten. Jake saw his people being erased from history. "Some of us escaped," Helen continued. A few ships made it beyond the galactic rim. They took genetic samples, cultural records, everything they could save. They promised to return when they were strong enough. She looked at Jake with hope and fear. Did they? Did they ever come back? Before Jake could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the structure. Tony checked his scanner. Ships incoming. Lots of them. They ran to the observation deck. Outside the asteroid field, space was filling with vessels. But these were not council ships. They were sleek and black and moved in perfect formation. They were beautiful and terrible and completely unknown. The largest ship sent a signal. A man's face appeared on Helen's communication screen. He was human, but something about his eyes was different. They were too bright, too knowing. He looked like he could see into their souls. "Dr. Carter," the man said. "I am Admiral Marcus Stone of the Terran Reclamation Fleet. We have returned to fulfill our promise." Helen fell to her knees. "Marcus? Marcus? Is that really you? You were just a boy when the ships left." The Admiral smiled, but it was not entirely human. "I was. Now I am something more. We all are. 3,000 years has taught us much, Helen. We learned patience. We learned power. Most importantly, we learned that mercy is a luxury we can no longer afford." Jake felt something cold in his chest as he looked at the fleet outside. These were humans, but they were not his humans. They were something else. Something that had grown in the darkness between the stars. Something that had come home for vengeance. "The reclamation begins now," Admiral Stone announced. "The galaxy will remember what it did to us. Every species that participated will pay. Every world that stayed silent will answer. The age of human suffering ends today." Jake looked at Helen, at Lisa, at Tony. They were the last innocent humans in the galaxy. In a few hours, they would learn what their species had become in its long exile. They would learn that sometimes the price of survival was becoming the very thing your enemies feared you were. Admiral Stone's ship docked with the ancient facility like a predator claiming its prey. Jake Morrison watched through the airlock as the new humans came aboard. They moved with perfect coordination, their steps synchronized, their breathing matched. It was beautiful and disturbing at the same time. The Admiral himself was tall and lean with silver hair that seemed to glow in the dim light. Behind him came others who looked human but felt different. Their eyes held knowledge that no human should possess. Their faces showed emotions, but Jake could tell those emotions were chosen, not felt. Dr. Helen Carter ran to Admiral Stone and embraced him. "Marcus, you came back. After all these years, you came back." Stone held her gently, but Jake noticed how careful his movements were, like he was handling something fragile that might break. "We promised we would return, Helen. Humans keep their promises." A woman in a blue uniform stepped forward. Her name tag read Dr. Amy Walsh, Chief Science Officer. She looked at the old facility with interest. "Project Exodus was more successful than we hoped. You preserved so much knowledge, so many records." Helen smiled with pride. "We saved what we could. The genetic banks, the cultural databases, the historical archives. Everything the Council tried to destroy." Dr. Walsh nodded. "That data helped us in the early years. But we found so much more beyond the rim." Her eyes grew distant. "The galaxy is older than anyone knows, Helen. There were others before us. Great civilizations that rose and fell. They left things behind." Jake found his voice. "What kind of things?" A man in black armor answered. His uniform identified him as Captain Rick Turner. "Technology that makes council ships look like toys. Weapons that can unmake matter itself. Most importantly, we found the truth about consciousness, about what intelligence really is." Tony Rodriguez, ever the engineer, leaned forward with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Captain Turner smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Individual consciousness is inefficient. A single mind can only process so much information, can only react so quickly, but multiple minds working as one." He tapped his temple. "We call it the unity. Every enhanced human is connected. We share knowledge, reflexes, even emotions when needed." Lisa Grant stepped back. "You're talking about a hive mind." "No," Dr. Walsh corrected. "A hive mind has one dominant consciousness, controlling others. The unity preserves individual personality while allowing perfect coordination. I am still Amy Walsh, but I am also part of something greater." Jake felt sick. "You're not human anymore." Admiral Stone turned his two bright eyes on Jake. "We are more human than we have ever been. 3,000 years of exile taught us hard lessons. The galaxy respects only strength. Individual humans are weak, divided, easily manipulated. United humans are unstoppable." Helen looked between her old friends and her new ones. "What happened out there, Marcus? What did you find?" The Admiral gestured, and holographic displays filled the air around them. Jake saw star maps showing regions. Beyond any chart he knew. Strange structures floating in empty space. Ships of impossible design moving between distant galaxies. "We found the architects," Stone explained. "A race that existed millions of years ago. They built wonders across multiple galaxies before they disappeared. Their ruins taught us about dark matter manipulation, quantum consciousness transfer, exotic matter engines." Dr. Walsh continued the explanation. "The architects left behind warnings, too. They spoke of cyclical destructions, of younger races being eliminated by established powers. The pattern repeats throughout galactic history. The strong destroy the different, the creative, the potentially dangerous." More images appeared. Council fleets attacking peaceful worlds. Species being exterminated for the crime of being too advanced or too independent. The same pattern over and over across millions of years. The Galactic Council isn't evil, Captain Turner said. They're just following the same script that's been played since the galaxy was young. Maintain stability by eliminating threats. The problem is, they define threat as anyone who might challenge their control. Jake looked at the images and felt his worldview crumbling. So you decided to become the threat they said you were. Admiral Stone's expression hardened. We decided to become what we needed to become to survive. The innocent humans died 3,000 years ago, Jake. What stands before you now is what grew from their ashes. Helen placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Show them the rest, Marcus. Show them what we've become capable of. The holographic display changed. Jake saw ships unlike anything in Council space. Vessels that seemed to bend light around them, that moved through space in ways that defied physics. Weapons that could phase through shields as if they didn't exist. Soldiers in armor that made them faster and stronger than any organic being should be. Our ships exist partially outside normal space-time, Dr. Walsh explained. We can appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours. Our weapons operate on quantum levels, dismantling molecular bonds rather than simply applying force. Our soldiers are enhanced with architect biotechnology. Tony stared at the displays with fascination and horror. How many of you are there? Enough, Captain Turner replied. We've spent 3 millennia building our strength, preparing for this moment. Every enhanced human knows their role, their purpose. We are the instrument of humanity's vengeance. Jake felt cold spreading through his chest. What about humans like us? The ones who survived here in the galaxy? Admiral Stone's expression softened slightly. You are precious to us. You are living links to what we once were. Your genetic patterns, your unmodified consciousness, your cultural memories, all invaluable. You will be protected, preserved. Studied. Studied? Lisa's voice was sharp. Dr. Walsh nodded. Enhanced humans process emotions differently than baseline humans. Your reactions, your instincts, your moral frameworks, they help us remember who we were became what we needed to be. Jake realized with growing horror that they were being treated like museum pieces, relics of extinct subspecies. And if we don't want to be preserved, if we want to live our own lives, why would you want that? Captain Turner asked with genuine confusion. We can offer you enhancement, connection to the unity, purpose beyond anything your current existence provides. You could be part of something magnificent. Helen looked between the two groups of humans, and Jake could see the conflict in her eyes. These enhanced beings were her people, the children of the humans she had helped save. But they were also strangers wearing familiar faces. Alarms began ringing through the facility. Captain Turner's eyes went distant for a moment as he accessed the Unity network. Council patrol ships are approaching. 3 light cruisers with standard armament. Admiral Stone smiled, and it was terrible to see. Perfect timing. Jake, you and your friends are about to witness the new reality of galactic politics. The enhanced humans moved to their battle stations with inhuman precision. No words were needed. No confusion existed. They flowed like water, each knowing exactly what the others would do. Jake watched from the observation deck as the council ships approached. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The council ships fired first, their energy weapons striking what they thought were vital systems. The enhanced human vessels absorbed the attacks without damage, their exotic matter hulls redirecting energy into their own power systems. The response was swift and precise. Beams of impossible light reached out from the human ships and the council. Vessels simply stopped. Their engines died, their weapons powered down, their life support systems failed. But the hulls remained intact, the crews unharmed. Selective molecular disruption, Dr. Walsh explained as Jake stared in shock. We can target specific systems while leaving others untouched. The crews are alive but helpless. Admiral Stone spoke into his communicator. Council vessels, this is Admiral Marcus Stone of the Terran Reclamation Fleet. You have 30 seconds to abandon your ships before we claim them as salvage. The Council crews didn't hesitate. Escape pods launched from all 3 ships as alien voices screamed surrender offers over the communication channels. Within minutes, the once proud Council patrol had become derelict hulks floating in space. Jake watched as enhanced human teams boarded the captured ships. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, gathering intelligence, studying technology, preparing the vessels for conversion to human use. This is just the beginning, Admiral Stone said softly. Every species that participated in our genocide will face judgment. Every world that stayed silent will answer for their complicity. The age of human weakness ends now. Helen Carter looked at her old friend, and Jake could see tears in her eyes. Marcus, what have we become? The Admiral placed a gentle hand on her cheek. We have become what the galaxy made us, Helen. They wanted to eliminate humanity because they feared what we might become. Now they will learn that their fears were justified. Jake Morrison stared out at the stars and realized that the humans had indeed returned. But the question that terrified him was whether anything truly human had returned with them. The liberation of New Geneva began at dawn. Jake Morrison watched from the command deck of Admiral Stone's flagship as human vessels surrounded the mining world. Below them, millions of human descendants worked in the mines, unaware that their 3,000-year enslavement was about to end. Commence Operation Homecoming, Admiral Stone commanded. His voice carried across the Unity network to every enhanced human in the fleet. Jake felt sick knowing that thousands of minds were now thinking as one, planning with perfect coordination. The planetary defense grid activated as Council forces realized they were under attack. Energy shields flickered to life around the major cities. Orbital defense platforms turned their weapons toward the human fleet. For a moment, Jake hoped the enhanced humans might be stopped. The hope died quickly. The human ships simply vanished from normal space and reappeared inside the defense grid. Their exotic matter weapons reached out like fingers of light, touching each defense platform with surgical precision. The massive structures didn't explode or burn. They just stopped working. Their crews abandoned them in terror. Dr. Amy Walsh stood beside Jake, her enhanced eyes processing battle data at inhuman speed. Minimal collateral damage, she reported. 0 civilian casualties so far. We're targeting only military assets and alien administrative centers. Jake watched dropships launch from the human vessels. They moved through the atmosphere like falling stars, landing near every major mining facility. Enhanced human soldiers poured out wearing armor that made them look like mechanical gods. But Jake noticed something that chilled him. They moved with no urgency, no anger, no passion. They were carrying out the liberation of their own species with the cold efficiency of machines. Take me down there, Jake said suddenly. I want to see the humans you're saving. Admiral Stone nodded. Captain Turner will escort you. But be prepared, Jake. These people have been conditioned for generations to believe they deserve their fate. The dropship carried Jake, Lisa Grant, and Tony Rodriguez to Mining Complex 7. Captain Turner and a squad of enhanced soldiers accompanied them. As they descended, Jake could see human workers emerging from the tunnels, confusion and fear on their faces. The mining complex looked like a prison. Gray buildings surrounded by energy fences. Guard towers manned by alien overseers. Human workers wearing identification collars that would shock them if they strayed too far from their assigned areas. Jake felt rage building in his chest as he realized his people had been living like this for millennia. Captain Turner moved through the complex with his soldiers, neutralizing alien guards with weapons that rendered them unconscious rather than killing them. Jake noticed this and wondered if it represented some remaining spark of humanity in the enhanced beings. "Why aren't you killing them?" he asked Turner. The captain paused in his advance. "Because dead enemies cannot spread fear. These guards will return to their superiors with stories of human power. Fear is a more effective weapon than death." Jake found the main barracks where human workers huddled together in terror. When they saw him approaching, they fell to their knees with their heads bowed. The sight broke something inside Jake's chest. "Stand up," he said gently. "You don't have to bow to anyone anymore." An older human man looked up with confusion. His name tag identified him as Ben Parker, Section Foreman. "Please, sir, we've done nothing wrong. Our quotas were met yesterday. The productivity reports show we exceeded expectations." Lisa Grant knelt beside the man. "Ben, we're here to free you. You're not slaves anymore. You're coming with us." Ben shook his head frantically. No, we can't leave. This is where we belong. Our ancestors were criminals, dangerous people. The council was merciful to let us live at all. We have to stay and work to make up for what our people did." Jake felt sick hearing the words. 3,000 years of propaganda had convinced these humans that they deserved enslavement. They had been taught to hate their own species, to be. Grateful for their chains, Tony Rodriguez found the complex's administrative center and accessed the historical records. What he discovered made him call Jake over immediately. "You need to see this," he said, his voice shaking. The records showed the systematic indoctrination of human children over generations. Each new birth was registered with the council. Children were taken from their parents at age 5 for education that taught them humans were inherently violent and evil. They were taught that their suffering was necessary to protect the galaxy from human aggression. "Look at this," Tony pointed to. "A medical file. They've been drugging the food supply with chemicals that suppress aggression and independent thinking. These people literally cannot rebel, even if they wanted to." Jake stared at the records and felt something break inside him. The council hadn't just committed genocide. They had turned the survivors into willing slaves who thanked their captors for the privilege of suffering. Captain Turner appeared beside them. "The complex is secure. All alien personnel have been neutralized or evacuated. We found 43,000 human descendants here. How many want to leave?" Jake asked. Turner's expression showed something that might have been sadness. "Less than 100. The rest begged to stay. They say they're afraid of what will happen to the galaxy if humans are allowed to be free again." Jake closed his eyes. When he opened them, he saw Admiral Stone entering the administrative center. The Admiral's face was grim as he reviewed the indoctrination records. "This is what the council calls mercy," Stone said quietly. "They didn't just kill our ancestors, Jake. They poisoned the minds of the survivors so thoroughly that freedom terrifies them more than slavery." Dr. Walsh arrived with a team of human scientists. "We can reverse the chemical conditioning," she reported, "but the psychological damage will take time to heal. Generations of learned helplessness don't disappear overnight." Jake watched as enhanced humans began loading medical supplies and cultural materials onto their ships. They moved with mechanical efficiency, processing the liberated humans like inventory. There was no joy in their movements, no celebration of their people's freedom. "This isn't liberation," Jake said suddenly. "This is just changing who owns them." Admiral Stone turned his two bright eyes on Jake. "Would you prefer we leave them here? Let them continue living as grateful slaves while their masters grow rich from their labor?" "I'd prefer you remember what it means to be human," Jake shot back. "These people are terrified and confused. They need compassion, not processing." For a moment, something flickered in Stone's expression. Something that might have been the man he used to be. "Compassion is a luxury we surrendered long ago, Jake. These people will be cared for, protected, given purpose. That's more than the Council ever offered them. Lisa Grant had been working with a group of children, trying to calm their fears. She approached Stone with fire in her eyes. Purpose? You're talking about them like they're resources to be allocated. Doctor. Walsh stepped forward. Every liberated human will be given choices. They can join us, accept enhancement, become part of something greater. Or they can settle on protected worlds where they'll be safe from Council retaliation. And if they choose neither? Tony asked. If they want to make their own way in the galaxy? The enhanced humans exchanged glances through their Unity network. Captain Turner answered. Why would they choose vulnerability when they could have strength? Why choose isolation when they could have connection? Jake realized that the enhanced humans genuinely couldn't understand why anyone would reject what they offered. To them, individual consciousness was an outdated inefficiency. They saw their unity as evolution, not lost. As the day ended, Jake stood in the mining complex's central plaza, watching enhanced humans shepherd confused human descendants toward evacuation ships. The former slaves moved like sleepwalkers, following their new liberators with the same passive obedience they had shown their former masters. Admiral, Stone joined Jake in the plaza. You disapprove of our methods. I disapprove of what you've become, Jake replied. These people needed to be saved, yes, but they needed to be saved by humans, not by whatever you are now. Stone was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what I was before we left the galaxy, Jake? I was a child, barely 8 years old. I watched Council soldiers kill my parents, burn my home, hunt my people like animals. The last thing I remember of the old galaxy was running through burning streets while my world died around me. Jake felt a chill as he heard emotion creep into Stone's voice. For 3,000 years, I've carried that memory. Every enhanced human in my fleet carries similar memories, passed down through genetic archives and cultural preservation protocols. We remember what was done to us, even if we no longer feel it the way baseline humans do. Stone turned to face Jake fully. You ask why we don't show compassion, why we don't celebrate, why we process rather than embrace. The answer is simple. We can't afford to feel those things. If we allowed ourselves to experience the full weight of our people's suffering, rage would consume us. The unity doesn't just make us efficient, Jake. It protects us from emotions that would drive us insane. Jake stared at the Admiral, and for the first time saw the human boy trapped inside the enhanced being. So you've made yourselves into machines to avoid the pain of being human. The war spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within weeks of Chairman Vextar's declaration, entire systems were choosing sides. Some species, horrified by the evidence of humanity's genocide, joined the Terran Reclamation Fleet. Others, terrified by human technological superiority, rallied behind the Council's banner. Jake Morrison stood in the tactical center of Admiral Stone's flagship, watching holographic displays show the changing map of galactic allegiances. Red zones indicated Council-controlled space. Blue showed human-allied territories. But it was the growing patches of gray that worried him most, neutral zones where species fought among themselves, torn between fear and guilt. The Altarians have joined us, Dr. Amy Walsh reported, her enhanced consciousness processing diplomatic communications at superhuman speed. Their delegation says they always suspected the truth about humanity's extermination. Captain Rick Turner studied battle reports from the front lines. The Zentarians are massing fleets at the Rigel Junction. Intelligence suggests they're planning a major offensive against our supply lines. Jake noticed how the enhanced humans discussed the war without emotion. Species joined or opposed them based on calculated probabilities. Entire civilizations were reduced to tactical advantages or strategic obstacles. The passion that should Drive, a war of liberation, was completely absent. "What about the human descendants we've liberated?" Jake asked. "How are they adapting?" Dr. Walsh's expression flickered with something that might have been discomfort. "Slower than anticipated. The psychological conditioning runs deeper than our initial assessments suggested. Many still believe they should return to their former captors." Admiral Stone entered the tactical center, his silver hair gleaming under the harsh lights. "We have a new priority target," he announced. "The prison world, Tartarus. Council intelligence indicates they're holding several thousand human descendants there, including individuals with knowledge of pre-genocide human culture." Jake felt a chill. He had heard whispers about Tartarus, a world where the Council sent beings too dangerous to execute, but too valuable to simply eliminate. What kind of knowledge? Historical records, genetic samples, cultural artifacts that survived the initial purge, Stone explained. "If we can retrieve these materials, we can better understand what humanity was before the genocide. It will help us remember who we're fighting for." A mission to Tartarus revealed the true extent of what the enhanced humans had become. Jake insisted on joining the assault team, along with Lisa Grant and Tony Rodriguez. They traveled aboard a stealth vessel that could phase between dimensions, making it invisible to conventional sensors. As they approached Tartarus, Jake saw a world of gray stone and metal towers. The planet's surface was covered with prison complexes, each one holding thousands of beings the Council considered too dangerous for normal society. Energy fields surrounded the entire world, preventing escape. 47,000 prisoners, Captain Turner reported as they studied the planet's defenses. Approximately 3,000 are human descendants. The rest are political dissidents, religious extremists, and individuals who opposed Council policies. The assault began at midnight local time. Enhanced human soldiers phased through the prison walls like ghosts, their exotic armor allowing them to exist partially outside normal space. Jake watched through helmet cameras as they moved through the corridors with mechanical precision. What disturbed Jake most was how the enhanced humans dealt with prison guards who resisted. They used weapons that induced unconsciousness rather than death, but their movements showed no hesitation, no moral conflict. When guards surrendered, the humans processed them with the same cold efficiency they showed everything else. "Cell Block 7 secured," came the report from squad leader Beth Collins. "Found 37 human descendants. They're requesting permission to stay in their cells. They say they're safer here than outside." Jake's heart broke as he heard the words. Even in prison, the human descendants had been so thoroughly conditioned that freedom terrified them more than captivity. Lisa Grant was working with the rescue teams, trying to calm the liberated prisoners. She found Jake in the prison's medical bay, where they had discovered something that made his blood run cold. "Look at this," she said, showing him medical records on a Council computer terminal. "They've been conducting experiments on the human prisoners. Genetic manipulation, consciousness studies, something called species loyalty modification." Jake read the files with growing horror. The Council hadn't just imprisoned human descendants. They had used them as test subjects to perfect techniques for controlling rebellious populations. The experiments included memory alteration, emotional suppression, and genetic changes designed to increase compliance. Dr. Kevin Brooks was among the prisoners they rescued from the deep security levels. He was an elderly human who had spent 40 years collecting and hiding historical records about pre-genocide humanity. When the enhanced humans brought him to the surface, his first words chilled Jake to the bone. "You're not human," Brooks whispered, staring at Captain Turner's two perfect movements. "Humans don't move like that. Humans don't think like that. What did they do to you out there?" Turner knelt beside the old man with mechanical gentleness. "We evolved, Dr. Brooks. We became what we needed to become to survive." Brooks shook his Head, evolution doesn't work that way. This is mutation. This is corruption. You've turned yourselves into the very thing the Council feared humans would become. The rescue mission succeeded, but Jake found himself deeply disturbed by what he had witnessed. The enhanced humans had shown perfect tactical efficiency, but zero emotional connection to the people they were saving. They processed human descendants like cargo, cataloging their skills and genetic markers for future use. Among the rescued prisoners was Diane Foster, a woman who had organized underground networks to preserve human culture. She had spent decades teaching other prisoners about their true history, fighting against the Council's indoctrination with nothing but words and hope. "They told us you would come back someday," Diane said when she met Admiral Stone. "But they never said you would come back as something else." Stone's expression remained neutral. "We are still human, Miss Foster. We have simply transcended the limitations that made our ancestors vulnerable." Diane studied his face with the keen eyes of someone who had learned to read people through years of underground resistance. "No, you're not. Humans feel joy when they rescue their own people. Humans celebrate freedom. You analyze it like a mathematical equation." Jake watched this exchange with growing unease. The enhanced humans genuinely seemed incapable of understanding why their emotional detachment disturbed the people they were trying to save. Dr. Walsh approached with a datapad showing the results of their intelligence gathering. "We've retrieved extensive historical records from Tartarus. The files contain evidence that several species actually protested humanity's extermination, but were silenced by the Council." Admiral Stone reviewed the data with interest. "Which species?" "The Kalari Republic, a vegan trade union, and surprisingly, 3 minor Zentarian colonies," Walsh reported. "Their governments filed formal objections to the genocide, but were overruled by the Council majority." Captain Turner's eyes went distant as he accessed the Unity network. "This information changes our strategic calculations. We can potentially split the opposition by revealing which species tried to help humanity." Jake felt sick listening to them discuss galactic politics like a chess game. "Those species tried to save us. Don't you feel any gratitude toward them?" Stone looked at Jake with genuine confusion. Gratitude is a liability in warfare. "These species may have protested our extinction, but they ultimately submitted to Council authority. They chose survival over principle. They were outnumbered and outgunned," Lisa protested. "What else could they have done?" "They could have fought," Turner replied simply. "They could have died with honor rather than live with compromise." Jake realized that the enhanced humans had developed a worldview where any choice other than absolute resistance was seen as betrayal. They had become incapable of understanding the complex moral calculations that normal beings faced when confronting overwhelming force. The conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the ship. Dr. Walsh's enhanced senses immediately processed the incoming data. Council fleet approaching. 15 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. They're broadcasting surrender demands. Admiral Stone smiled with cold satisfaction. Fleet Admiral Korthek himself. "The Council is finally taking us seriously." Jake watched the approaching Council fleet. On the tactical displays, the ships were massive, each one capable of destroying planets. Their weapons could glass entire continents. By any reasonable measure, the human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. "We should retreat," Jake said. "Those are some of the most powerful ships in the galaxy." "Retreat is not in our programming," Captain Turner replied, and Jake noticed he had said programming rather than nature. The Battle of Proxima Relay began when the Council fleet opened fire at maximum range. Their weapons lit up space with energy that could melt asteroids. Jake braced for impact, expecting the human ships to be vaporized. The siege of Haven Station lasted 3 days and changed the galaxy forever. Jake Morrison watched from the observation deck as the most heavily defended position in known space fell to human forces with terrifying efficiency. The station's massive shields, designed to withstand attacks from entire fleets, crumbled under weapons that operated according to physics the Council had never imagined. Admiral Stone stood beside him, his silver hair catching the light from the explosions outside. "The Council's reign ends today," he said with quiet satisfaction. 3,000 years of oppression will be answered in 3 days of judgment. Jake felt no joy watching the ancient station's defenses fail. Each successful human attack brought them closer to total victory, but farther from anything he could recognize as justice. "What happens after we win?" "We rebuild," Stone replied. "We create a galaxy where humanity will never again face extinction. We establish order based on strength rather than the false democracy that allowed our genocide." The final assault began at dawn on the 3rd day. Enhanced human soldiers phased through Haven Station's hull like ghosts, appearing in corridors and command centers without warning. Jake watched through tactical displays as they moved with mechanical precision, neutralizing resistance without hesitation or mercy. But something was different about this battle. The enhanced humans were more ruthless than before, their unity network driving them toward objectives with inhuman determination. When Council forces surrendered, the humans processed them efficiently, but without the careful restraint they had shown in previous engagements. Rick Turner led the assault on the station's command center. Jake watched through Turner's helmet camera as the enhanced soldiers cut through defensive barriers like they were made of paper. Council officers fired desperately at the advancing humans, their energy weapons having no effect on armor that existed partially outside normal space. Chairman Vexstar waited in his command chamber, surrounded by the few guards brave enough to stay with him. The old Zentarian scales had lost their polished gleam, dulled by the stress of watching his empire crumble in mere days. "You have won," Vexstar said when Turner entered the chamber. "But victory will not give you what you seek. Revenge cannot bring back the dead or heal the wounds of history." Turner studied the chairman with emotionless eyes. "We do not seek healing. We seek to ensure that what happened to humanity never happens to anyone again, by becoming the very threat we tried to prevent." Vexstar's voice carried the weight of species-deep exhaustion. "Look at yourselves. You are no longer the humans we feared. You are something worse, beings without compassion, without doubt, without the capacity for mercy." Before Turner could respond, Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system. "Rick, I need to speak with the chairman. There's something he needs to see." Jake had spent the 3 days of siege reviewing the historical records they had recovered from Tartarus and other liberated facilities. What he had discovered made him sick to his stomach, but it also offered a path forward that didn't end in galactic domination. When Jake entered the command chamber, Chairman Vexstar looked at him with curiosity. "You are not enhanced," the alien observed. "You move like the humans we remember, not like these things they have become." "I'm one of the survivors from the original genocide," Jake explained. "My people hid in the outer colonies, trying to preserve what we could of human culture." Vexstar's scaled features showed genuine interest. "Then you know the truth. You know why the Council acted as it did." Jake nodded grimly. "I know about the warning from the future. The message that claimed humanity would eventually destroy all other sentient life in the galaxy." Turner's enhanced senses immediately focused on Jake. "What warning?" Jake activated a holographic display showing documents from the deepest archives of Haven Station. The records were sealed with security protocols. That had taken Dr. Amy Walsh's enhanced consciousness 3 days to crack. In the year 2157, the Council received a temporal transmission, Jake explained. A message from approximately 1,000 years in the future. It contained detailed records of galactic history, showing how humanity would eventually develop. Technology that could eliminate other species without them even realizing they were under attack. The holographic display showed images of empty worlds, dead cities, entire civilizations that had simply vanished without trace or explanation. According to the future records, humanity had become something beyond recognizable intelligence, converting other species into raw materials for their own expansion. The message warned that if humanity survived the 22nd century, they would eventually consume every other form of consciousness in the galaxy, Jake continued. The Council's genocide was meant to prevent this future from occurring. Admiral Stone entered the command chamber, his enhanced senses having detected the conversation through the Unity network. Temporal manipulation is impossible, he stated. Flatly, the laws of physics prevent information from traveling backward through time. Not according to architect technology, Dr. Walsh said as she joined them. Her enhanced consciousness had been analyzing the temporal records while Jake spoke. The warning came through the same quantum channels we use for our exotic matter. Weapons. The physics are consistent with what we've learned about higher dimensional manipulation. Chairman Vexstar looked between the enhanced humans and Jake with growing understanding. You see it now, don't you? The Council's genocide created the very future it was meant to prevent. By forcing humanity to evolve beyond normal consciousness, we turned you into exactly what the warning described. Jake felt the pieces falling into place in his mind. The enhanced humans, the Unity network, the loss of individual compassion. This is how humanity becomes the galactic threat, not through violence or conquest, but through evolution that removes everything recognizably. Human from human consciousness. Turner's expression showed the first crack in his emotional control that Jake had ever seen. You're suggesting we caused our own genocide by trying to prevent it? I'm suggesting the galaxy is trapped in a temporal loop, Jake replied. The future sends a warning about humanity. The Council commits genocide to prevent that future. Humanity evolves in response to the genocide and becomes the threat the warning described. That future humanity then sends the warning back in time, completing the cycle. Admiral Stone's two bright eyes studied the temporal records with inhuman intensity. If this is true, then our enhancement, our unity, our entire evolution was guided by this paradox. We became what we are because the future told the past we would become it. Dr. Walsh's enhanced consciousness processed the implications at superhuman speed. The temporal mechanics are stable, she reported. The loop is self-sustaining. Every action we take to prevent the warned future actually causes it to occur. Jake looked around the command chamber at the faces of humans and aliens alike. But there's another possibility. What if we choose to break the loop? How? Vexstar asked. By choosing not to become the threat the future warned about, Jake said simply. The enhanced humans have the power to dominate the galaxy, but they also have the choice not to use it. Turner's enhanced features showed confusion. Why would we choose weakness over strength? Why would we allow ourselves to remain vulnerable to future genocides? Jake turned to face Admiral Stone directly. Because the boy you used to be would have been horrified by what you've become. Because Dr. Helen Carter didn't preserve human genetic material and cultural records so you could become inhuman. Because the humans you're fighting to avenge would have chosen mercy over domination. For a moment, something flickered in Stone's expression. Something that might have been the 8-year-old boy who had watched his world burn 3,000 years ago. The Unity network, Jake continued, it doesn't just coordinate your actions. It suppresses the human capacity for moral doubt, for emotional uncertainty, for choosing compassion even when efficiency would be more practical. Dr. Walsh stepped forward. The Unity protects us from emotions that would compromise our effectiveness. Without it, we would be paralyzed by the weight of our species' suffering. Or you would be human again, Jake replied, capable of growth, of forgiveness, of choosing to build rather than just survive. Jake activated another display, this one, showing the liberated human descendants from the mining worlds and prison planets. Look at them. Really look at them. They're not grateful for your liberation because you didn't liberate them. You just changed their owners. They can sense that you don't really care about them as individuals, that you see them as genetic resources to be preserved and studied. Admiral Stone studied the images of confused, frightened human descendants, and Jake saw something crack in. His enhanced consciousness. What are you proposing? Voluntary disconnection from the Unity network, Jake said. Not for all enhanced humans, but for enough to remember what it feels like to be individuals again. Let some of you experience doubt, uncertainty, the capacity to choose mercy over efficiency. Turner shook his head. Without the unity, we would be vulnerable. Our coordination would suffer. Our tactical effectiveness would decline.